Opposing the government and opposing the Conservatives. I'm afraid it's the hard left who want to tighten their control. They want to sideline moderate voices. I don't think anybody should be surprised about that is the nature of the hard left. And of course we know that the hard left famously cannot tolerate any dissent. Well, we know who the hard left are, who associate with the hard left. You just said that we were right to right wing. The hard left agenda, printing money, nationalisation without compensation, that sort of hard left wing position. Hard left, the 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 hard left, hard left, hard left, the hard left, the hard left, hard left, the hard left, hard left, hard left, hard left, hard left, the hard left, the hard left, left, the hard left, the hard left, left, the hard left, hard left, the hard left, the hard left, 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 the hard left, left, the hard left, the hard left, hard left.
She let me get to know her a while, oh, for a little while. Back when the milk train used to rumble my shack, used to stop outside of my door. Now the milk train doesn't come by here anymore. I think he's listened to multiple. Now I still.
I think he probably has, or at least tried
listened to a Gape cast, and that's why he blocked me after being mutuals with me for a little while.
Like their serious analysis of my Fabian leaflet, even though they hated every single word of it. But
he did listen to that. Do you reckon he listened to the episode where we stitched him up with the interview and everything?
I reckon someone might have told him about it at least, yeah.
He'd be like, that nice young man wasn't so nice after all. Swindlers and thieves.
That was always going to be the peak of it, though. Like, I still can't believe the line. It includes me and some other people.
He wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong. Should we? Oh yeah, I just love when they're like, the woman's like, so they support you then, and Gates is like, no. No.
The squalid desperation of a once great man.
Yeah. Did you see that post the Trashies did the other day of a picture of Gates at the hustings? Like, look how they massacred my boy. He just looks like a jellyfish that's melting.
I feel if he didn't have such terrible opinions, I would feel sort of pity and sympathy for him beyond sort of the ironic pity and sympathy that I feel for him.
If he was like 20% less awful, like, yeah, absolutely. Even if his politics would still be pretty quite bad there, but like,
yeah,
we've been through this cycle a few times, haven't we? Where we start feeling like genuine sympathy and affection for him, and then he'll come out and be like, yes, I agree, in the replies of some transphobic or anti-Muslim horror.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Gates is a TERF now, great.
Yeah, or most common, in fact, just starts to defend the Iraq War again. You're like, fuck, actually, no.
Or defend Starmer. Like, I would love it if he kept, like, sniping at Starmer for being, like, a secret Corbynite and stuff. That would be my favourite shit, but no, he's just typical, like, well done, Keir, well said, great to have real leadership again. It's like, you're not even allowed to be in the party, brother, and when they start allowing people who ran against the party back into the party as a symbolic gesture, it ain't gonna be you, it's gonna be Luciana.
Oh, God. I just love the fact that he's obviously got the residual hatred for Corbyn, but other than that, he's just focused, like, 100% of his energy on hating Sam Tarry.
Yeah. Like,
become like an avatar of all he despises.
Like when Tarry lost for Trigger Ballot the other day, and FFF was like, Mike Yapes, this is better than losing. This is better than when I still had a wife and saw my family on a regular basis. Well, should we all hit record on since we're bantering?
Yeah, cool. I'm just checking my levels, and I'm going to make a couple of adjustments, but I'll do that in a second.
Yeah, EQ that shit up, get it pumping.
Yeah, I hit record a bit ago, but I've also got MP3 Skype recorder going as well.
Nice, me too, so doubled up.
Yeah, the amount of times we've either both forgotten to do that, or one of us has done it, and it's just not worked or something. So,
you never be too careful.
Yeah. I take it, Jack, you've seen the news in the last hour or so?
Well, what that our brave boys at the Parliamentary Standards Commission came through. Finally, one institution that cannot be bought by the forces of the deep state.
Yeah, the second oldest institution relating to the oldest parliament in the world. Beautiful.
Yeah, I was thinking that might be a good appetizer to get into. With Pete's legal expertise. I think that we could really lay out the case for why Keir Starmer should be extradited to a country where certain interrogation techniques are allowed that aren't permitted on British soil. Prison's
just
too
certain.
good for him.
That's just certain shipping containers in Britain.
Yeah. There's this there's this new documentary on Netflix out about Woodstock 99, or as I call it, the Sinan Coes Festival. And I didn't, I haven't watched it yet because it's 3 parts. They obviously saw that other production company or fucking channel or whatever did that 1 part Woodstock 99 documentary, and then they saw Gapecast's 3-part Gape Fest documentary series, and they were like, that's it, we want to do that, we want to steal a bit of their thunder, a bit of their prestige. So they've made this 3-part series on Woodstock 99, and it actually made me realise, just seeing it on there, oh shit, we forgot a really good fucking opportunity for a joke in that, which is Woodstock 99 was hosted on this fucking former military base, which was just the most miserable concrete structure, not a music festival place. There was barely any grass. I feel it to do a little double entendre, this wasn't a grass festival either, if you get what I mean. There are probably people doing trucker speed and stuff there, and fucking punching someone to Limp Bizkit. That's more the kind of scene, but it was awful, and because it was on this fucking concrete military base, the sun just made all the concrete really hot, and just that made people even more pissed off and doing even more crimes in that. And so I was thinking the military base angle, that would have been such a good thing to incorporate into Gape Fest, have Gapes host it on a CIA black site or something.
They invite him for a laugh as a gimmick figure, and he accepts because he thinks it's just a celebration of extraordinary rendition or something. He doesn't realise his band's playing at all.
Well, Pete, we got you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. I've adjusted my settings to minimal feedback, so if I hit record, there should be a usable track at the end of all this.
You run yourself through this whole rig, stacks of Marshall amplifiers that you got to watch out for feedback with that. It's the Grateful Dead's famous wall of sound.
Well, except for some reason it's like Neo in The Matrix. There's just sort of various pieces of equipment just falling off my shelves and shit. So that's how it's going. Anyway, I'll hit record now, and let's do what we will.
Awesome. So let's rock. So let's fuck. Who's the director who says let's fuck before he... It's not Clint Eastwood. He said, after he does a take, he says that's enough of that shit. There's another director who likes to say let's fuck before a take. I definitely used to know this. Somebody listening hooked me up with this. Anyway, let's fuck.
Sure. But let's roll, in the words of the Flight 95.
Yeah, terrible Neil Young song. Let's roll for freedom. Let's roll for love. We're going after Satan on the wings of a dove.
Perfect.
Yeah, a fine tribute to the martyrs of United 93. Of course, I mean the suicide bombers. Wait.
Of course, you mean the government agents?
The government agents, and it wasn't a suicide bomb, was it? They were hijackers.
Well, I mean, arguably they used the plane as a bomb.
That's true. That's true, and they did die. So I guess it. Yeah, I guess it's just kind of semantics, isn't it, at that point?
Well, as I was alluding to, it's actually all just a cover up from the deep state.
Yes, we've had too many of those recently, so I had to scrap a fucking episode because the Durham police got
Fucking melted.
Yeah, previously an organisation that I held in the utmost regard, just unimpeachable, a record of total integrity. But no, the fix came in. They cleared Keir Starmer of his heinous, made-up lockdown crimes that he committed. And that was just a travesty of justice. But yeah, as we alluded to a minute ago, our brave boys at the Parliamentary Standards Commission, that's what they're called, right, have come through with the goods.
Yeah. So it's just the story that broke in June that he was being investigated, and everyone was like, no, he hasn't broke any rules, and it doesn't matter if he did. There's various things there.
They found that it's Keir Starmer toppled the World Trade Center. It's all out finally.
They did. He took a large donation from Osama bin Laden's family.
I wouldn't be surprised. There's still a lot we don't know about the money coming into Starmer. I think.
I can't remember if that was him or Prince Charles, so that means it's both of them. That's how this thing work. We've got a legal expert on the episode today. That's definitely true.
Yeah. Should we introduce our?
That's probably a good idea.
Legal expert, the finest legal mind of his generation. You've heard of Keir Starmer, you've heard of Saul Goodman, you've heard of Jeff Samuels, but have you heard of a Twitter user at Bane Nuke?
Exactly.
At Bane Luke Akehurst.
That's it. Yeah.
Nuke's first, it's later rightward turn.
Well, hi, and thanks for having me on the show. I've never been on this podcast before because there was never a former user of mine that got banned in 2019. That was previously here.
But if that was you, which I'm not saying it was, this would be your first proper appearance in, I believe,
if I did
years.
It
would. Yeah. I'm on the advice of my attorney, which is me. I can't confirm or deny
that. Another great legal mind.
Well, the problem is the legal minds you're talking of are all of the former generation. I'm more of the sort of the Muad'Dib, the chosen one that was meant to bring balance to the force. So, comparing them to me is like comparing, I don't know, the Spitfire to the F-35. I'm the F-35, the far superior vehicle there.
That's all very well, but let's cut to the chase. How many foxes have you killed?
Look, directly, you'll never get me on the hook for any foxes. I've killed as many foxes. I've killed fewer foxes than Keir Starmer has broken parliamentary standards. I can tell you that much.
And probably than Keir Starmer has killed
at most
foxes.
7.
Just probably. Allegedly.
You see,
you're a lawyer. You can get me out of
between
this
0
one, right?
and 7. That's sufficient.
Well, the thing is, if you're keeping donkeys, foxes are going to be there. So
got to intervene. Got to keep a cricket. Was it a baseball bat? Wasn't it?
It was a baseball bat with.
It would be very British if it was a cricket bat.
Cricket bat was what one of our former presenters threatened.
Yeah.
That's a really important.
Oh man, it's gonna be dope when Jolyon has fucking Nick Cohen's head above the mantelpiece next to the foxes.
Not long now.
The reckoning is here.
Turn a windmill into like the Nick Cohen's career memorial. It's the second windmill that he's got down the road from his main one.
Yeah, you're gonna need windmills to power Nick Cohen's. Nah, never mind. That's a shit joke. That sucks.
Dennis that ever stopped us before.
Okay, cool. So my sources are telling me that Keir Starmer is actually scheduled to be executed for these breaches, and I'm pro-life, so I take no pleasure in reporting that. But,
that's going to be a hard one for you.
I'm also a huge fan of Keir Starmer because we're both we're both sort of members of the same profession and
Brothers
professional
of the
organisation.
cloth. Is that
I go with wig. Brothers of the wig is closer to what we are.
okay?
But yeah, the thing with Keir Starmer is like he is the greatest lawyer of his generation.
Yeah.
So I think we're not going to hear the end of this. We're going to hear some very loyal explanations, which are going to sound very cool in public. Like everyone really gets very satisfied when someone who's broken the rules explains how actually they didn't break the rules, and here's a clever get out about why they didn't break the rules. People really love that.
Well, I'll just say that wigs are very good for covering up baldness. Have you ever seen Keir Starmer's hair in public? No, you haven't. So I just think you just read between the lines there. Where's the report on that?
I mean, Keir Starmer's a wealthy guy. He can afford to buy an entire farm of donkeys. You think he can't afford to get a good wig maker? I rest my case.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah, exactly. So what's he actually done then?
So from what I've seen, the most substantial
murder, drug trafficking, robbery, these kind of charges.
Public indecency.
Well, the thing is, the main thing seems to be is he just seems to be accepting like tickets from football clubs and stuff.
Yeah.
But the one which stands out is the sort of unparticularized sale of a plot of land, and no more details given on that.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, CIA black site that he personally lent out to them.
Well, it's a sort of leaseback operation. The CIA, he sold it to them, and then they lease it back to him. So that if you suggest that, say, his name isn't Keir at all, you'll find yourself waking up there after.
Yeah, like a kind of Iran-Contra situation. Totally
I'm thinking
legal
more,
and above board.
Well, I'm thinking more a sort of a David Miliband special. You sort of get rendered into a farmstead on Surrey or whatever fucking county he comes from.
Yeah, do you think there's a possibility that it might be the donkey place? The donkey crib, donkey house?
I mean,
donkey
if I'm a CIA guy and I'm writing sort of something stupid, I would call
if you did it.
I would call it the Donkey Farm.
I'm just going to steal my co-host jokes from 5 minutes earlier throughout this episode.
Yeah, no, I mean, think about it though. It's like you can just see in a sort of CIA movie George Clooney saying he got sent to the Donkey Farm.
That place they call the farm. To quote
yeah.
Mr. C, one of the great villains in history. No, not that Mr. C, the one who led the Labour Party for 4 terrible years, causing untold chaos and destruction.
I think you'll find his name was Mr. Cobb, according to the Czech, the Czech spy thing. Do you remember that? Mr. Cobb. God,
Mr. Cobb.
It is funny that to touch on the Czech spy thing, because that slightly precedes several of the items that we discussed today. But what a wonderful time.
What a wonderful world. There's a great bit actually on, I hate to recommend rival podcasts, people who were of a comparable level of fame and stature to, like Owen Jones. Like, I hate to tell people to listen to his podcast, but Alex Nuns was pretty good on it. And he just said at one point, like, yeah, the Labour right won. It's depressing. It's a depressing world. It was like the great rallying cry. I didn't disagree with him, but it was just very funny, funnily matter-of-factly put.
I was going to say, like, he keeps... you mentioned there that a few of these were basically, like, him claiming hospitality and then I'm not declaring it by the deadline, but it's just a weird thing where he seems to be, like, trying to maximise how many Arsenal games he can blag tickets to by like going to the away games of the other London teams. Like, so what sort of a wanker would go to like Crystal Palace's hospitality to see the team that isn't Crystal Palace play? Like, and 2, it's just really, really funny that he basically broke all the rules to see his team get absolutely battered by a team no one expected to beat him.
Well, look, it's not like I support an immediate City rival of Arsenal's and think it's incredibly funny how they ended up in the last season. But beside that, it's so weird because like he is independently wealthy.
Yeah.
It's very easy to just buy those tickets. It's
Yes. Yeah.
You know, it's like people wang on about how rich Corbyn is because he lives in a house in London, but Keir Starmer himself lives in a similarly situated. In fact, if you look at them exterior to exterior, a much nicer looking house and probably a much bigger house on the inside. And so if we base those two things side by side, they're comparable. But Keir Starmer was also sort of the premier human rights QC for many years, and that's a lucrative business. It's so weird to see guys being penny anted by this, and this is a slight digression, but it harkens back to the nonsense of the expenses crisis, because you'd see people who just had no need to be claiming for these things, just absolutely blagging it, and it's like
it was the entitlement that angered people more than like, oh, you've claimed some extra office supplies you shouldn't have, so much as like, why have you done that when you earn 80k and you get another what would be 30k's worth of stuff for us on expenses anyway, you know?
Yeah.
Why would you not like buy that garden ornament yourself or whatever it is, you know?
Well, yeah,
it's that again, you know.
Well, it's built,
there seems to be a real sort of insular and quickly built up entitlement among MPs with this in general. Because I mean, Starmer, when you think about it, has not been an MP that long, and he's obviously got quite quickly sort of put everything on the expenses I can remotely get away with, and this sort of thing. I blag every freebie I can as well through the obviously. I said expenses there, but a lot of them are picked up through the sort of the parliamentary working groups and so on that they do, a lot of which are sort of industry blags. Charlotte Nichols had been an MP about 5 minutes when she realised she could blag loads of free hospitality just for like going to a few meetings a year.
I'm not a grass or anything, but just like picture me like in some like old school phone booth, just like in a trench coat and a hat, just like hurriedly like entering in coins and being like, "Hello, is that the Parliamentary Standards Commission? You might need to look into it, Charlotte Nichols."
Oh, so that's what you meant by going for a pin.
yeah. Just
I
forgot.
I was worried that was that you weren't going to end the tale with phoning about Charlotte Nichols there and being in a phone booth.
I was reminded that you can do that, and that I was like, "Oh, Keir Starmer's got in trouble for this," so I just went and grassed up all my enemies in that short little period, all my parliamentary enemies.
Well, the funny thing is about it, and this just looping a bit back to what Geraint said is. He's only getting in trouble for the stuff he hasn't declared. The stuff he has declared just raises some questions as well. I mean, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, but it does link into into some of the things. The fact that he was still on Mishcon de Re's payroll.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that individually you could put down to sort of carelessness or hadn't really thought of that. But in the space of a few years since he's decided to run for leader or really mount up, the other one that I remember quite well was when he was running for leader, when the three leadership campaigns were going on with him, Long Bailey and Nandy, and a lot of people, particularly on the left, were saying, understandably, like, candidates need to declare who's funding them, any financial support they're getting. And by the book, by the rules, the way the timing of the contest rather went, there were essentially like two deadlines. So any received by a certain date had to be declared by date 1, and any received after that would then be declared at this later date. And the first half of funding declared by Starmer was broadly on the up and up. You know, there was some on there from like single donors and so on, but it wasn't like this guy's really dodgy. It was fairly typical for a political campaign. And of course, immediately the second those come out, even though a lot of the people doing so would have known there was more to come, we're immediately doing, the crank's seen off, look, this has all come out and it's perfectly normal. They were just like stirring for the sake of it. And then, of course, like a month later or whenever it was, then the next set come out, and that's the ones where he put a lot of his biggest donations, where he put in like the gambling lobby funding that he had and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, speaking of
But
which, Matt's
at
our
this point,
cousin,
couldn't
one of
be
the
reined in.
fiercest opponents of the gambling lobby in this country. When he was on our show, he said, and obviously he worked for Rebecca Long Bailey on her campaign, but he said that Keir Starmer had one of the most well-funded political campaigns in the history of the Labour Party.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to say it, I mean, the People's Vote got like 58 million, and really that was the seed for his eventual rise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that fucks me off about like that toss of Femi and stuff. Is just like, you would not exist if you were not in some way serving the interests of capital. You'd just be like some fucking nobody, like on the left, like you know, any of us. Like you would not like be able to like make your living just going out there doing these ridiculous stunts and all this shit if there wasn't a steady stream of money pouring in. Like, look at actual left-wing campaigning groups. They don't just spring up overnight as a professional operation. You know, a Labour Party run by the left was barely a professional operation, as I'm sure we'll get into. But yeah, just like absolutely fuck all this like this well-funded pseudo-progressive politics.
They had like 65 members of staff, and as far as I could tell, the most they ever did was organise a few large events in London, which
The referendum was radical.
There was a lot of shit to clean up after that, I guess. Not from the dogs, though.
By the time Starmer was in, they didn't really give a shit about having a second referendum anymore after all that.
Yeah.
It's almost as if a lot of the people putting the money into campaign groups such as that were more about the effect it would have on politics for them to be making that much noise, rather than what that noise could achieve on face value.
Well, that sounds like a conspiracy to me.
Let's get Dunn and Linsky on this.
Well, I once had Patrick Hennigan pop up in my DMs advancing almost exactly that, on the basis that he thought he could get me to stop subtweeting him or just openly calling him a cunt if he framed it as like, yeah, well, I was the good side of the People's Vote and not like the bad side with Alistair Campbell. Bet you hate him, don't you? Like, yes.
That's pretty amazing.
I can hate two people as well.
I'm confused by the People's Vote factions, because I've heard variously that Alistair Campbell was part of the kind of loyal to Labour faction, but I guess maybe there was a faction within a faction, and Patrick, you know, like the Blairites and Brownites, these fucking indistinguishable people all hate each other.
I'm going to say that I don't necessarily think Patrick Hennigan is the most reliable source I've ever had for anything I've said on this podcast.
I don't think Patrick Hennigan is a reliable narrator for his own life, let alone for sort of the external lives of others.
He explicitly isn't, because the wider context of this was like, and the women were lying about me as well.
Oh, right.
The old Nick Cohen defence.
I'm sure we'll keep alluding to that throughout this. But did he get a big payout from the Labour Party when Starmer came in, Hennigan?
I don't think so.
I don't think Hennigan was part of it.
He got briefly suspended, didn't he? But it was quite brief and under the carpet, I think.
Yeah.
Well, no, I
don't think they were too explicit about exactly who was suspended in terms of leaking it to the press, apart from Emily Oldknow.
Oh, over the leaked report.
My understanding is...
I think he was suspended for a bit, and then they were mostly let in at some point during 2021.
Well, no, I actually think that quite a few, I think like 8 or 10 of them, maybe a dozen at most, were actually suspended. And I think, and Hennigan specifically was the one guy who wasn't allowed back in for a time.
Oh, God, I hope that's true. Well,
they made a point
because they've probably let about 10 bastards back in, but like, if it has to be only one that they kick out, that's very, very funny.
Well, some people have advanced, there's a few theories on this. One is mine, that it was like, that just sort of tells you that is that everything said about him and in the alleged sexual impropriety in the People's Vote is true. The other theory was he was the guy who who fucked up and sent the WhatsApp chat to everybody. So that's punishment for that.
Yeah, he got the rest of them in trouble. So that would make sense if true.
Yeah, here we go. I've got the story from the Keir mouth itself.
Oh.
Right. No, the most reliable source there is, always rated them.
February 2nd, 2021. Labour reinstates ex-official suspended over leaks dossier. Subhead: but Patrick Hennigan, who was accused of ridiculing Diane Abbott in WhatsApp messages, has not been let back in. So.
Have they let him back in now?
I don't. To my knowledge, they haven't, and I think this was interesting because a lot of people confused him with his father, Paddy Hennigan, who I think is a CLP
he's
head.
like a right-wing CLP leader somewhere else. So every time he pops up in like the background of a story, everyone's like, surely not. they let this guy back in.
Yeah, he's just
No,
got all his
it's
mentions
his dad.
will just be
Oh,
like,
right, yeah,
you
that's
threw the
1% more
2017
normal.
election, you bastard. And he's like, I did, but on a much smaller scale.
I'm a different bastard, P. Hennigan.
Yeah, you're thinking of my son, who is also a bastard. I really should have named him something different on reflection.
Thank God the line's likely to die out with that next generation.
Yeah, we're doing Game of Thrones shit here. We've extinguished the Hennigan line. It's going to pass over to House Akerst is going to take over all their holdings.
He's extinguished it himself by just like not being able to behave around women.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably get onto that as well.
Allegedly, right, Pete?
This from all that has been reported, it would seem that a lot of women perceive that he has not behaved themselves, and I believe this podcast believes women. So
yeah, this is a woman-respecting podcast.
So I think it's safe to say that those allegations, whilst allegations, you're believing women, which is a respectful thing.
They're credible.
Yeah, like
Three people are making very similar allegations about him in a short time.
To cite another example, like Nick Cohen, for example.
Yeah.
Lots of
one of the most notorious offenders in that area.
Look, I don't believe personally that all those women got together and conspired, I guess out of like political reasons or whatever, to make false accusations against Nick Cohen and sabotage his career. You know, maybe because he's such a brave defender of women over, you know, the evil that trans people are doing by existing. So like
every woman in journalism under the age of about 38 is actually a secret agent of Putin.
Just in the WhatsApp, they're like, "Who do we get today, girls? How about Cohen? That guy, he's pure. He's this totally innocent man. We could tarnish his name just for fun. Like this wayfish, you know, this ingenue Nick Cohen, who's never hurt a fly.
Just for enjoying a single drink of a Friday night.
A single grope on a Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've heard a few stories allegedly about Nick Cohen that I wouldn't repeat at all, but suffice it to say, the man, he's got a very sort of hands-on approach to how he deals with female colleagues.
Yeah, well, thank God for the courageous work of Jolyon Morgan QC.
Is it Jolyon Morgan?
Morn, whatever.
Yeah.
Fine, he's your mate.
I always thought it was like Morn.
Yeah, well,
I thought it was Morn.
He's your best friend, so you would know, wouldn't you?
Oh shit, he follows you, doesn't he?
I've corresponded with him.
Your close personal friend, Jolyon Morn QC.
He literally unblocked me to like a joke about the Fox incident that Matt cousin DM'd him, as I understand it.
You've got to laugh. Like, what can you do?
But, but we made that a constructive friendship.
You either learn to laugh
around mutual enemies.
You wake up in cold sweats in the middle of the night with that Fox's face irreparably etched in your memory.
Yeah.
To which I say, you shouldn't then put its head over your mantelpiece if you don't want it to be in your mind.
Well, my understanding is he wore it like the wolf thing in the Northman. Alexander's, before going into court to accuse Nick Cohen of
Yeah, sorry, Pete. We don't have fascists on our show. Like I hear you've watched that alt-right film The Northman, so I'm gonna have to kick you off the call right now.
It's fine. I only came on here to infect the podcast with that subtle.
Your vague Vicernist style far right Nordic politics.
Oh man, God, I'd love to talk about Varg. He's so funny. But this isn't what we're doing.
No.
We're
a much worse man than Varg, I'd say. Even Varg, who, lest you forget, is a convicted murderer as well as a fascist. We're talking about somebody who probably may, in his capacity as a public prosecutor, sent a few people down who shouldn't have been sent down.
We're talking, of course, about Jeremy Corbyn.
That's the way that he prosecutes people within his party, which is, I guess maybe you can see some link there with his attitude to the law in general, but
was part of the problem in his previous career not so much that he wasn't prosecuting people who very much should have been prosecuted. The buck stops with him. He's at the top. He's responsible.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I knew exactly where you were going with that, and it's a very fine point. He should have spent less time focusing on people who stole bottles of water, and more time focusing on prosecuting,
prosecuting people who took licks of ice cream, which in fact he did do that as well. So this is a completely defamatory thing, and I advise you to stop saying that Keir Starmer failed to prosecute one of the most evil men on earth.
Himself?
That guy who took a lick of ice cream and then got deported to Portugal.
Yeah, well, he, of course, I got a little confused there because, lest we forget, Starmer is a soulless man, a charmless man, an evil man.
A John man.
Okay, let's not go too far. That's a bit much. He's no John man.
John Mann is effectively in control of Labour's disciplinary processes now. Mann's law.
John Mann, completely unrelated to the previous discussion, obviously boasted about having a big dossier on high-profile paedophiles that he then very publicly did nothing with.
To be fair, he never
independent of everything either side of this on the podcast.
I don't think he said paedophiles. I think he just said sex offenders.
Yeah. That would be mad if John Mann was just sitting on a paedophile conspiracy.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I also believe
they don't meet at a pizza place. They meet at fucking 20. No, that is a pizza place. They meet at a different artisanal pizza joint to the US equivalent.
They meet at like that fish and chip shop that one American lady posted about a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that was.
Don't remember that. I don't pay attention to Americans. Sorry.
Do you reckon they're starting doing like fish and chip shops and the same business model as American candy shops now, and then they, once in a blue moon an American will go into them and actually buy some shit there?
As you were saying that, a light bulb popped in my head, and the answer is yeah. That makes a lot of sense now, actually.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? Because the locals would already assume like, oh, it's a bit of a tourist trap. I won't go there. I won't pay too much attention to it. So
yeah. Worst comes to the worst, we have to, serve some idiot, and they'll post a stupid picture on the internet.
Yeah, anyone can do bad fish and chips.
And also, that's a convenient that's a convenient alibi as well, because I think you'll find that an American ate our fish and chips, which proves that we're not a money laundering operation. So, if anything, what I'll say is to your listeners, don't do this very good idea for a money laundering operation if you have money to launder, because I'm going to do it.
Crime pays. Everyone's at it. Keir Starmer, according to the Parliamentary Standards Commission, is that crimes? Is he doing crimes? Does it count as crime?
It's not.
Does it count as a crime?
Morally.
Morally, yes.
He is a moral criminal. He is I view him as a political criminal.
What I would say, and this is a phrase which I pulled straight from the Forde report. It's like it is a breach of natural justice.
Business. It's a breach of what?
Natural justice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the Forde report then?
I feel like we should, yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's get down to business, because, we haven't properly covered this on the show yet. I did Sinan's stream, and we put that out after the fact on our stream, on our feed. So, you're like Tim on cinema moment there for a second. I'm just like, starring Tom Cruise.
So I wasn't able to watch that, unfortunately, but I gather you were very composed, measured, and that's my understanding of your appearance.
Yeah, hitting my vape that Dr. San hooked me up with. But yeah, where was I going with that fucking shit? Anyway, I've lost my train of thought now. So I've got a bit of a headache. So I'm hoping we can get into this shit so I can hand off a bit of the responsibility.
We're just starting to come on to the Forde report.
Yeah, whatever. What was that? Yeah. Okay, so we covered it a bit on that stream, or rather I did. I tried to get Geraint on that, but he had better things to do inexplicably. And so whilst I was deeply personally offended by that, we decided we'd get together with our good friend Pete, aka Bane. I can call you Pete, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, of course you can.
Would you prefer Bane?
Just whatever. Call me Pete, Bane, alternatingly.
Well,
it is my name.
Catergy's already doxed you, hasn't he? So.
Yeah.
And we know for a fact that neither he nor any of the other psychopaths online ever can stomach more than about 5 minutes of a podcast.
Yeah.
So we're far enough into this episode that you could probably give out your national insurance number, bank details, and so on, and you'd only be scammed by fellow leftists. So that's nice.
Well, that's cool. I don't remember them right now, but you can put them in the show notes.
Well, So anyway, we got Pete / Bane on here. Obviously, where Oz goes, I leave. So I'm where Oz leads, I follow. So I'm just trying to perpetuate the docs.
He didn't invite us onto Corbyn a post-mortem, so he's not welcome here.
Yeah, well,
frankly.
I mean, the
Very
most
rude
left-wing
of him.
voice
Very
in that was
rude.
Paul Mason, I think. But yeah, so the Forde report was obviously a big deal, though, and it relates to a lot of the stuff we've been discussing on the show for, like, ever. So, probably going to touch on even some of the same shit that we did when Pete last came on the show, allegedly 5 years ago. So, I was just wondering what you guys think would be a good place to start with the Forde report. Like, where would you begin getting into it?
Should we start with like just an overall sort of summary of where it was at?
Yeah.
The Forde report was obviously commissioned over 2 years ago. There was the leaked report first, which exposed the WhatsApp messages in particular of various Labour staffers being abusive, indicating they were working against the party when Corbyn was in charge and so on, and running various extremely dodgy election funding strategies. And there was quite a lot of racism in it as well, which is probably what got the inquiry into it started so quickly. It couldn't just be ignored. So this has been expected for well over 2 years. It was due to come out long before it did, and partially because of that and some sort of succession of short notice delays to it, plus just everything else that's happened in the Labour Party in that time, I think basically everyone on the left was expecting it to be like the whitewash to end all whitewashes, and just to bend over backwards to, well, basically to devote about 90% of its running time to trying to identify who leaked it and what their punishment should be. But it wasn't that. It's not. Neither is it a great report that fully holds the right of the party to account. But what it does highlight, basically, again, I think the press were expecting to be able to use it as a stick to beat the left with. They did anyway, but
not as much as you'd expect.
No, it makes some very, very strong and very clear criticisms of the people in the leaked report on the Labour right, and basically putting it down to factionalism as well, therefore implicitly not looking good for a lot of people on that right faction, including some groups that have been basically above criticism for the last few years. However, it also does a kind of both sides are at fault thing. It's probably quite fair that it says that Corbyn's office was very sort of disorganised and at times very dysfunctional, but it kind of presents that as like equal to, these people were being racist as hell and running diverting funding, and sort of hiding it from the rest of the party.
Yeah, it's certainly not a moral failing to have a disorganised office.
Yeah, it seems like sort of quite high level corruption mixed with mild incompetence, weighed up as equal with mild incompetence.
Well, you've touched on something interesting there, which is that the report does take this very both-sided stance and concludes ultimately that both the left and right, I should note that when Rachel Wearmouth said this on the New Statesman podcast, she said the left, and like as if everything inside her was dying, she left this big pause and then obviously couldn't think what else to say and was just like, right. The left and right both weaponise the issue of anti-Semitism for factional ends, and again this was repeated by Wearmouth and the other people on the New Statesman podcast without ever explaining this. And so I had to go to the Owen Jones podcast. Again, don't want to hype up our opponents, our rivals who we're totally on the same level as, just podcasting opponents, I believe, I mean, not opponents politically on that much, but Rachel Shabby appeared on that after Alex Nunn's, and she actually gave quite a she actually elucidated more clearly than really anyone on the right as to what was meant by that, although it still is a conclusion that I disagree with, which is that the Labour right were weaponising anti-Semitism by using it as a kind of political bludgeon against, or a political cudgel to bludgeon the left and Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, whereas the left were weaponising anti-Semitism through quote-unquote denialism, through effectively denying the claims that the right were making. My issue with this is that the definition of denialism has been stretched so far and wide that now pretty much being on the left in Britain requires a certain level of denying that the issue was as it was painted by the media and by our political opponents within the party. But I think it's striking that even with this kind of both-sidist framing that we'll return to shortly, I'm sure, more hay hasn't been made out of this by the media, and I think it's because the substance is just not there in the report to validate their claims that they've made about the left.
I think on that particular aspect, both sides definitely viewed anti-Semitism as a weapon. The difference being the right were holding the gun and the left were trying to run away from the bullets. And, but that the weapon is anti-Semitism, that the right are saying, the right are pointing at the left, and the left are saying, "You're pointing a gun at me. This is ridiculous." So in that pure sense, that analogy, yes, that is weaponizing the issue. But I think the idea that the left should never have defended itself in any way was very mainstream for a while, and more people have gotten onto the side that, well, actually, no, that's a silly way of approaching the issue.
Yeah. I almost felt listening to that podcast like I was back in 2018 or something, you know, like Owen and Rachel started the discussion with the obligatory, well, it was a very, very serious issue, and of course the Labour leaked report acknowledges this, and blah, 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 and it's like, you know, of course it became a very serious issue, that much is evident, but, you know, we don't need to kind of keep reaffirming that kind of deceptive framing of the whole thing, I think.
Yeah, and I think something that a lot of people fall into the trap of is doing like a 2-minute preamble about the whole thing, which covers off saying, of course it was this, it was this, it was that, it was that. It's like, well, that's part of the canon right now.
Yeah.
In fact, it's beyond the canon. It is the media sense that there was an anti-Semitism crisis in Labour throughout the entire period, which began in September 2015 and ended in April 2020. Was that right? God, yeah, that's when he took power. But there's still problems. There's still lingering problems, and weirdly, those problems only come up when certain parties decide that, you know, Starmer needs a bit of a beating. And needs to fall in line. And I guess in terms of the Forde report particularly, what it shows is, sorry, I've highlighted it so much I need to go back. Is and sorry if I've broken your structure here.
No, that's fine. We don't have a structure.
Oh, wonderful.
We go free for man. It's fucking jazz.
Cool. So I was going over it again today. I've been over it 3 times, once generally and twice in slightly more detail. But my favourite passage of this regarding the leaked report is and I've not seen it much discussed. It's this one. It's like, to quote, regardless of its accuracy, which is discussed below, the leaked report is arguably a slanted document, a factional document. It represents another front in the factional warfare which it describes, and by its nature added nothing to the supposed kindness in politics that the party purported to be moving towards.
Fucking hell, man. I didn't realise there was an actual so much for the kind of gentler politics in there.
Yep, that's wonderful, and I'm just amazed. I mean, I can see why people more haven't picked up on it, but that kind of sets the tone.
Yeah.
Because what Forde does in this is he lays out a lot of things, and he then sort of allows himself to be interrogated as though he were a witness being cross-examined. Because he'll say something like, and this is the classic. The classic one is where he's like, there's no indication that there wasn't a rival, Seamus Milne WhatsApp chat. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, you have no evidence for that speculation.
Yeah.
But it sounds like somebody
feels... We're all against group chats on the left. I'm sort of opposed to any kind of collective action, really. I just prefer not to associate with other people, let alone coordinate them. So, yeah, those of us on the hard left would never, ever be caught near a group DM. And, of course, I'm being facetious, but your point is accurate. Sorry, Martin, but you needed to dig further and find it if you're going to make that point.
It's one of the few bits where it just feels like this looks really bad for the right faction. I need to insert a little bit of balance here.
Yeah.
And some of them you sort of reached a little bit, and then there's ones like that where it's just like, there might be something directly equivalent to this on their side that we've not found. Therefore, both sides should have a good long think about what they've done.
And there's a lot of instances of that, but it really just seems like if you were in a courtroom drama, it's something you would get like the police to admit. It'd be like, I guess there may have been something like this, and then that would be the big stinger before the Court of Drama ad break. And I did a little search because I was very interested in how in what is covered in this report, and I'm going to give you a rundown. Factionalism or iterations thereof, 158 instances. Racism, 62 in the report. So what we have here is a report where factionalism is the original sin.
That is incredibly telling of where Martin Forde QC is coming from.
Yeah, and as I was saying, so you got factionalism, 158 words, like that is, and he's never mentioning it in a positive light. And racism, 62, I assume and hope he's never mentioning that in a positive light. And so what he does, it's a very interesting trick. He says, well, this was factional, that was factional. And then he sort of extrapolates the bad things, like the actual, the substance of the bad things that were happening. And then he says, well, look, it was all factional, and this increased mistrust between the two sides. So who's to say? It's kind of like if you're at school and, your bully came up and beat 7 shades of shit out of you, and you, like, threw some mud in his face, and you'd both get the same amount of detention for it.
Yeah, his mates are just like, oh, well, he was provoked.
Yeah, and the teacher's like, "Well, I can't be bothered to sort this out.
Yeah,
you both got into a fight, and fighting is against the rules.
Yeah.
Therefore, you both have 3 days detention. Where to begin? And I think if we're going to start on factionalism, the interesting observation he makes is, there's one wonderful passage where he says, Jeremy Corbyn was, of course, not the first leader to win the position of leader from the left. Harold Wilson, Michael Foot, Neil Kinnock, and Ed Miliband also did so.
He does clarify after that, doesn't he? That they were from a different left, a less left-wing left. So, I mean, kind of
he says
a silly point,
tribute.
really. You have to go back to Lansbury for some kind of precedent for Corbyn, who, by the way, Paul Mason is currently doing a kind of Tides of History deep dive on why he was such a cunt, and anti-Semitic Bevan, what's he called? Ernest Bevan was right to fucking destroy him at the TUC conference.
Yeah, well, a name that isn't mentioned in this report, Paul Mason, and he's the most important part of this whole party. So.
Just the forces of Putin at work again, conspiring to write this great man out of history.
Martin Forde, you're on notice. But to then in that same section, he notes that factional opposition to the leader in the period reached new heights because of unprecedented opposition within the PLP and an escalation of conflict within the NEC. And he ends the sentence saying, this was a new type of conflict, however. It's in which each faction had in its hands at least some power of the party's operational levers.
What a load of bullshit.
Well, it's bullshit, but it's also telling on two levels, because
it's interesting in what it acknowledges about recent Labour past before Corbyn.
Yeah, because it means the genuine affront that HQ felt was simply that the left were having any power whatsoever.
Yeah. I guess, that's true. The left were in a significantly more of a position of power than they had been at any point in the past, really. I guess what I objected to in that was, when you've got the party machinery and the Parliamentary Labour Party, that really, in a party that is not truly democratic, as the Labour Party is not, it leaves it extraordinarily skewed against the power base of the leader, which is in the grassroots, and this one office that is the leader's office that is constantly thwarted by HQ and the Parliamentary Party.
Oh yeah, and to be fair to Forde, he does kind of acknowledge that. He touches on it in his sort of overall narrative. He says that by 2015, the majority of the party's senior staff did not see their roles as requiring perfect neutrality, or even the appearance of it. The practice was to, and I'm paraphrasing here, hire Blairites, and that was fine. But sorry, Jack.
Oh no, do you want to finish your point?
Oh no, that was my point. I was just
Well, speaking of hiring Blairites, something that struck me as a bit off about Rachel Wearmouth's analysis when I was listening to the New Statesman podcast earlier was that, you know, she talked a bit about, and frankly, actually, she was more equivocal about whether or not the Ergon House scheme, the scam where the Labour right, apparently not illegal scam where the Labour right funneled members and unions' money into protecting their factional allies in basically what was already safe seats. You know, they talk about, oh, well, could it have affected the election? Could it have been decisive in some way? I think the main way in which winning the extra seats that could have been won were Labour to have taken a more offensive campaign, could have affected the result of the election were the Tories not able to cobble together the kind of flimsy majority they did. There may have been a much sooner call for another election, which I'm fairly certain Labour would have won at that point after the 2017 election. But, you know, they kind of get, you know, do that kind of speculation, get all academic about this, could that money allocated elsewhere have tipped the scales of the election for Labour? That's one point about that issue. The other point is, why was it all going to these fucking right-wing MPs? Like, that's surely a major thing that shows that this was something underhand. This was something deeply factional, as Martin QC would say, and Martin QC Forde.
Matt Forde QC.
Matt Forde QC. Yeah, this is way funnier than any of his other comedy shit, you know. But like, doesn't he conclude ultimately that though it was not illegal, it was wrong? And that was a deeply factional thing to do, which obviously for him is the worst thing that you can do.
Yeah, but the thing is, like I say, factional is factional, and it's the ultimate sin, but it's the original sin. So we are all guilty. You and I, we're all guilty of factionalism.
Yeah,
and so we should all have come together. We should have all just been friends. That's Martin Forde's kind of. He just sort of shakes his head and say, "Oh, it's just a real shame. Everyone should have been friends there, man."
And that kind of brings up the issue of like the profound ideological differences that were at stake in this. I made the point the other day that, you know, it was inspired by seeing David Aronovich's latest article slating Starmer and saying, oh, he's an uninspiring leader, he can't win. And, you know, you think about what kind of thing would inspire David Aronovich, and it's just like, Jesus fucking Christ, man. It's the Labour Party under Keir Starmer, not fucking right-wing, Blairite, Atlanticist, pro-business, all this shit for you. Is it really not? Like, it seems extremely in that direction for us, but I guess, you know, Times columnist mindset is just kind of like, oh, they're still like, you know, capitulating to the transes and thus they're on the hard left or whatever. You know, that's what goes on in their fucking glistening mind palaces. Like, but I was inspired by seeing that and just thinking, yeah, you know, it would not be possible for there to be a politician who was good and won the approval of these people. These two things are mutually exclusive. Like, you know, the issue about, you know, Jeremy Corbyn being anti-Semitic or whatever is that if you subscribe to a certain politics, then, you know, yeah, you can't have somebody who has defended the human rights of Palestinians as much as Jeremy Corbyn has, who will not be considered anti-Semitic. You can't buy the people who considered him it for the reasons that they consider him it. You simply can't have somebody with consistent politics like that who won't be criticised in this way. And so, like, factionalism is not just a case of like, oh, why can't we all get along? You know, there's pretty good reasons why some of us can't get along. You know, someone like Luke Akehurst thinks that we all want to bring down Western civilization.
Well, I mean,
I mean, okay,
I
I get
would
that.
never-
But he likes Western civilization, okay?
Oh, right, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, his version of Western civilization. I mean,
Well, yeah, it doesn't seem very civilized to me. It's like Western barbarism.
Well, and to expand on that, there are a lot of people who think that they can kind of be like, oh, well, I'm the anti-imperialist left, but I'm good, actually. I'm not like one of these embarrassing old guys.
The pick-me left.
The pick me left.
Yeah.
It's like, and this doesn't even. This used to include Paul Mason, but he's just gone off the reservation. He's the fucking Slim Pickens left.
He is now an armchair general liberal.
The fucking general of the 101st Chairborne. And this is a message to the soft left. The Neil Kinnock.
Here's my message to the soft left, like extremely Clint Eastwood voice. Shut up, pussies.
Shut up, pussies! But also, they're coming for you, and you can't. You won't be able to have this nuanced position.
Yeah, and black, you fucking clown.
And any of them, the sock review. I don't mean the political magazine.
Not the Socialist Review. They are not called the Socialist Review. Something happened in the editorial meetings where the ist disappeared into the ether.
Well, and that's it. It's like you can't have a nuanced position on this because all you need to do is look across the fucking Atlantic Ocean at what AIPAC is doing in terms of how they ostensibly are aligned with the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party will bend the knee to them every time. But they're also just going out there and just kneecapping any Democrat who doesn't toe the line on this. This isn't to say it's a giant conspiracy, because it's not a conspiracy. It's out there up in the open. They openly admit that is what they're doing.
And on a much smaller scale, Luke Akehurst's job is openly director of We Believe in Israel, the UK subsidiary of Bicom.
Which is
Akehurst is very relevant here, actually, when you're talking about they'll come for the soft left eventually. In that Akehurst is very open about he will find the most left faction in Labour, no matter how not particularly left they are, and gun for them full bore. His old blog is one of the most fascinating political documents on the internet, because it includes extended rants about how people such as Chuka Umunna and John Harris are simply too radical, too far left to be allowed in the Labour Party, to organise in it.
How Harold Wilson was a massive Stalinist pussy. For you can be both for not invading Vietnam.
We're not exaggerating here either, by the way.
Yeah, but this is...
So maybe there was something to Martin Forde QC saying that Harold Wilson won from the left. If you have Akehurst's brain, about as left-wing as they come,
Well, I believe that Forde goes on to praise Labour to win as sort of the new non-factional way forward. So
that's mad.
I think we found the sort of what the ideological centre is, and it's a guy who thinks that the Yemen war is good because, I don't know, it'll piss off Iran for a while.
Because some of Bicom's partners can make a pretty bit of coin off it.
Allegedly. Maybe, or alternatively, probably. But to return back to what we were talking about in terms of these guys were just stalwarts, the fucking Praetorian Guard of old Labour values, and that's clearly not the case. And Martin Forde himself doesn't even accept that it's the case. And this really comes to a head in his report, and also sort of in the actual history of things regarding the validation exercises, which to cap those off, it was when a lot of people were joining the Labour Party. In 2015, 2016, and everyone was like, these are both Trots and Tories joining the Labour Party. This is an infiltration mechanism from the 4,000 maximum AWL members who I mean,
Yeah,
enough of that.
and you know, thousands of Tories who read Toby Jones's fucking shit. No, not Toby Jones. What's his name?
Toby
not
Toby
the,
Young,
not
I
the
presume?
actor Toby Jones. Not yeah, Toby Young. That
Toby
bald
Young,
bell end
yeah.
who's kind of disappeared from view in recent years. Like, I don't know what he's up to. I think he got sacked from everything.
He kind of has.
Yeah.
I feel like he might have been soft cancelled.
Yeah.
No, he's the. I think he's actually taken the free speech union seriously, because I've spotted them pop up in a few news stories recently. They're actually like fighting cases for sort of minor league gammons around Britain. So I think he might actually have committed to the most ridiculous job he's ever had out of all the ridiculous jobs he's had.
Wow.
You know what? Fair play.
Yeah, but anyway, that guy was big on like Tories should join Labour to destroy Labour by electing Corbyn leader, and like I'm pretty sure it's been thoroughly disproved that any significant number of Tories did join Labour.
Well, I'm going to rock your world here, Jack, because one of the staff, the HQ staff, I assume, said one of the learnings from 2015 was that some sort of system was required to make sure that there were not hundreds of thousands of Tories joining the Labour Party.
Hundreds of thousands, like all the people who voted for Corbyn were Tories.
For it to be hundreds of thousands, you'd have to be talking at the time like something like 60% of all Tory members joining the Labour Party.
The Labour Party's membership
no.
just inherited the entire Tory Party membership overnight.
I think you'd have to be talking like 100% and maybe over 100%.
Yeah, there's like 100 people in the Tory Party.
So membership in 2022 is 160,000 according to estimates. Hundreds of thousands implies
that has crept up a bit in recent years.
It has crept up a bit. I think it was at its kind of lowest in 2015, because this is when UKIP and
yes, of course.
Yeah, they
yeah.
didn't
A
have
lot of
Boris
people-
standing up to the deep state yet.
Because my Tory relatives had left the party specifically in 2015 because of various aspects of it to sort of support UKIP and the like. So the prospect here is that there's some guy who is apparently saying sincerely that hundreds of thousands of Tories are about to join Labour, which is insane. It is absolutely an insane thing to think. And if you found a friend who thought that, you should slap them, or, you know, if they're of a lower constitution, just have a nice talking to them. What Forde eventually finds is this: 230 applicants in as of the 21st of August 2015. 230 applicants had been refused a ballot. Some of them were Green, and some of them were Conservative Party members. So that's not hundreds. So of all that they could manage, they got 238 people. And you still get people today who said that, legions upon legions of Tories joined to vote for Jeremy Corbyn. But based on nothing, of course. And but that's not saying, of those 238, that he doesn't give figures, which is annoying, but he says others were wholly inadequate. For example, retweeting the Green Party. Submits images to SWP protests. Well, maybe we can differ on that one. Green Party likes on Facebook of Green Party and retweeted class war and quote likes a lot of Greens on Facebook. So basically, most of them seem to be Green Party members, and I would be very interested to see that breakdown of those percentages.
That kind of checks out though, because the kind of person who was in the Green Party in 2015, a lot of them thought that it's the left-wing party, and then Labour became kind of left-wing for a while, and they didn't have any use for the Greens anymore, which I understand is changing now.
Well, I've heard a lot of people say that Jeremy Corbyn actually ruined a lot of the left-wing energy that was existing in the country And I agree. The Green Party was just poised to rally a bunch of anarchist book groups into full revolution. Sadly, Corbyn came along as a stooge of the state and ruined all of that. We'll never see the history of the 2017 fucking Brixton book riot. To sort of carry on to the end of the validation exercise, which, as we were saying, one thing they note is that in 2016, it becomes a lot more professionalized, and so you have a set document, which is telling you the vetting process. In June 2016, I don't know what was happening in June 2016. I don't know if there were any interesting events happening vis-a-vis the Labour Party, its structures, or why or why not members should be excluded.
I think it would be factional to talk about that.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to be is factional.
Yeah,
I don't want to be factional. That's a sin.
I've never factionaled in my life.
The one tidbit of this is there was a suggestion that in order to sort of continue this vetting process, 10 casual staff were to be employed from Labour students to review the results of the searches.
Yeah, R.I.P. R.I.P. bitch.
God.
So yeah,
you can call an organisation a bitch. It's fine.
Well, Labour students have never been factional. That's one thing we know.
Yeah.
And they said a whole bunch of things, and in this handbook, and Forde goes through it. It's stuff like if you use the word Blairite or Blairite scum, which that's fine. You've just said the same phrase twice, in my opinion. But jokes aside, he notes that the GLU witnesses, like the how to describe them, the Sam Matthews of this world, sort of claim that there was nothing factional, that they were never trying to exclude members of the left, and there was no coordinated attempt to block Jeremy Corbyn from being the leader in the 2016 leadership contest. But he also notes, and this is very clear, this is one of the very clear phrases he used, we can see no legitimate non-factional reason why the search tool, i.e. the search parameters, was apparently designed only to catch abuse aimed at MPs on the centre and right of the party, and to ignore the majority of abuse aimed at MPs on the left, including Jeremy Corbyn. And he notes that this could have been easily included in the process. Like, all you had to do was just simply add Jeremy Corbyn into the search terms, and that wasn't done.
That's totally right. I mean, if you're looking at that from kind of an objective legal standpoint, you can't really say, well, here's why they were right to purely focus on the left. Again, it's just like the issue of the Ergen House scheme, the funneling money to their factional allies. It's not really justified. Like, you can't really make a good case for it other than, well, my guys are the good guys.
Yeah, and he says it even more bluntly in the following thing. He says, in our view, the intention and effect of both validation exercises was to remove ballots from individuals who would otherwise have voted for Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, and also there's the fucking mental thing about them, like, ringing a fucking bell whenever they'd kick a trot out of a party. Their trot hunts.
Oh, yeah.
I say trot as in, obviously means anyone to the left of Gordon Brown. In fact, including certain Gordon Brown supporters in some of these people's view. But, like, Ian Austin probably at some point complained that he was a trot because, like, he hung out with a right-wing trade union or something. Like, that guy's he's on the picket line with Community. But Community, like, picketing so that, like, workers get lower wages or something, whatever they get up to. Like, that fucking Ian Austin, that trot. But, yeah, every time that they'd successfully get a left-winger stricken from the Labour rolls of members, they would ring a big bell Like, that's a big Gapecast thing. Mike Gapes' childlike fascination with bells, and then it turns out that the guys in Labour HQ, you know, are living in accordance with the Gapes mindset.
Yeah, no, and it's quite, and in this report, and this is another aspect, a weird aspect of Forde, is he quotes this, which is clearly egregious, and then he's just like, oh, well, that's messed up. Let's move on.
Well, that's his opinions. I don't respect it, but I'm not going to say it either way, you know.
And then he just goes, it's like, well, you know, the NEC made final decisions and stuff like that. It's like, wait a minute, what did you just quote there, sir?
Who was in charge of the NEC at that point? Which faction?
Well, you know, who was General... well, that's another fascinating thing about Forde, and to an extent also the EHRC, is they're just like, we don't really know who is in charge. We're not going to name names here. And you frequently get references to a senior member of GLU. And, you know, if you were to Google it, you could find out easily the name. Mam Matthews. Sam Matthews.
I got you.
Allegedly.
Sorry, I was a bit slow on that one. Well, I want to get into that fucking guy, actually, because the reason that I invited you on, Pete, is because I thought your contributions on our friend Uncle Trash's Twitter space the other day, which was also on the Forde report, was very, very, very insightful. And you came on specifically to talk about how this report casts even further doubt that already existed on the claims of the John Ware-fronted Panorama documentary that aired on the BBC in 2019 and was considered a pivotal linchpin of the anti-Semitism-based case against Corbyn.
Yes. Where would you like me to begin? Because there's a lot.
Well, I'll just begin by saying that this is the third successive report that has not in any way corroborated the claims made in that documentary.
Yes, but what you'll find is that it doesn't exonerate Corbyn, who is in no way charged, so therefore it's okay.
Yeah.
It's
both sides, yeah.
But no, you are quite correct. It's the third one. I mean, are you counting the Chakrabarti report, or is there another one? No, EHRC.
That was far before the documentary, wasn't it?
So you mean the actual narrative that was presented, rather than saying, you know, there are things to be done on an institutional level, but they don't go directly to Corbyn. Cool.
Yeah.
So I shall begin. You are quite right. It more definitively than the EHRC report does.
Well, yeah, that's why I said that they don't corroborate, because this kind of pretty much actively disputes them, whereas the EHRC report just did not factor in this supposedly compelling evidence at all, which is quite a telling omission.
Well, I mean, if we go to the genesis of the report, this never got submitted to the EHRC. So,
yeah.
And to be fair to whoever made that decision, I think they would have just put it as a footnote and said something like, "We have heard varying degrees of disputes regarding the operations, and we have just declined to, you know, consider them," which is dumb, but it is what it is. But you are quite correct. The EHRC does not corroborate what was said in Panorama. It's very neutral. It's very passive. And it tries to spread the blame like a fine butter on toast, ignoring, you know, where the butter came from and where the bulk of it is. But to get to the Panorama documentary itself, the core claims in that documentary are that the leadership itself instigated involvement in the disciplinary cases, and that involvement was extensive and welcome and slowed down the work of the GLU, and that in the key period of March and April 2018, which is where everything unravels in terms of anti-Semitism and beyond, that it continued beyond that, and it was still a theme like a live theme in 2019, so that when in April 2019 you would get Tom Watson still saying they're still not doing enough, but they're still interfering.
Yeah, he said he also said I want every case on my desk.
I want every case on my desk, and here are 50 cases that I'm going to run past everyone.
Yeah. Every case on my desk, and no interference from figures of leadership. Signed, the Labour Deputy Leader.
It's Schrodinger's interference. There is simultaneously too much and not enough.
Yeah.
And Forde finds, and he's very clear about this, and that there was an enthusiastic invitation from the GLU. He just says that straight up. That's right there. That's plain in the text. And he also finds that there is evidence that the leader's office resisted invitations to expand their involvement, because which was also requested by the GLU. And that he also notes that the EHRC itself found that there was no systemic attempt by the leader's office to slow down or dilute the party's response to anti-Semitism, and Forde accepts that. So, boom.
If anything,
Two things.
They objected to the party, the leadership's efforts where they did try and speed up anti-Semitism cases.
In some cases, yes. For example, the Ken Livingstone case, which Forde covers quite clearly, and the competing narratives were, the leader's office were trying to slow this because he's an ally of ours, which never really comes across. That's just the perceptions of how that came about. But in reality, they were pushing him for him since 2017, and a certain individual who was in charge of complaints was slow-walking that for reasons that we never really get into. But the EHRC, they dinged Corbyn's office for trying to speed that one up. So,
and another instance wasn't Seamus Milne basically querying why so many Jewish members of the Labour Party were subject to anti-Semitism investigations, and basically saying, well, look, if this is happening, then something fundamentally wrong is here.
Well, I was going to get to that, but I'll do it right now. The claim of the Panorama thing was that Seamus Milne was sort of bearing over them and saying, I think we need to review this process going forward. That's a legitimate quote from what Seamus Milne was saying. But the person
terrifying, the rhetoric of this evil man just chills me to the bone.
Yeah, and in the Panorama documentary, he says, well, that's him instructing what he expects to happen. But the actual quote is Seamus Milne saying, if we're more than very occasionally using disciplinary action against Jewish members for anti-Semitism, something's going wrong. And we're muddling up political disputes with racism. Quite apart from this specific case, because it was a specific case this conversation was about, I think going forward we need to review where and how we're drawing the line if we're going to have clear and defensible processes. And one thing about Forde is, he says that at this time there were not clear and defensible processes. So Seamus Milne is essentially, he's saying, we need something more in place.
And doesn't Forde himself later express concern about the marginalisation of left-wing Jews and actually advocate that the Jewish Labour movement incorporate the left-wing group Jewish Voice for Labour into their anti-Semitism education programmes?
Yes, he does, and that makes a lot of people mad online.
Yeah. That was like the campaign against anti-Semitism came out like, this report is a Corbynite whitewash.
It was probably several of those guys.
Hey man, I agree with Margaret Hodge. The campaign against anti-Semitism should stay out of Labour politics.
Yeah, they're a Tory front, according to
Margaret Hodge. Yeah, exactly, an authority on these things.
Well, it's not like they were the ones who were the principal instigators of the EHRC investigation.
Mm-hmm.
That would be very weird if they were.
Yeah. So sorry, Pete.
Luckily,
were you making a point when I interjected?
Oh no! You're quite right, and you've linked in quite nicely to it. I've just scrolled by into the sort of what the what the Panorama guys claim versus what was actually said.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that in John Ware's. I don't know, he's pretty litigious, so let's see how I can phrase this. Absolute farce of a documentary.
Yeah, I'm sure they just happened to accidentally make a really bad piece of journalism where they got lots of facts wrong. It just happens.
Well, that's it. And to circle back to this key period, you get the final sort of point on it is that on the 17th of April 2018, just 1 month after this all started, the leader's office said, "Could you just stop? Could you please remove us from emails regarding complaints? This is your job." and the background to this
Do our
is
jobs never.
Well, that is the interesting thing, because what you have is in Forde, he says that one of the systemic problems was an inadequate system for logging and tracking complaints. And then you have him saying the complaint centre introduced in 2017 to 2018 remedied this position somewhat, but not entirely. And that seems to me to be referencing what is the the anti-Semitism task force that was sort of anticipated as being the closing point to filling up the complaint system that required the leader's office to sort of second people into that process. And that's sort of my generous interpretation of that history. But once you get to April 2018, what we've had in that, and what has begun that process is the Collier report. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Collier report.
It's just like a load of screenshots of like idiots off Twitter or Facebook. Facebook. That's it. It was a Facebook group Corbyn was part of, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, Corbyn had been part of. He left in sort of shortly after he had won the leadership election. So, but Facebook works. It shows that, if you have ever posted on it, you will still be there. So yeah. David Collier, evidently, and I mean, I hope for his sanity that he didn't individually look at every aspect of this post, but I wouldn't put it past him. But yeah, no, he produced like a 300-page report, which is just screenshots of this group.
Just screenshots.
It's what a miserable existence. But there were points in there where there were genuinely anti-Semitic aspects of it, and because Jeremy Corbyn had been in that group, they wanted to tie it to the Labour Party, and so they had no indication that anyone was a Labour member. It was just names in the group, and so they were trying to link and trying to find it out. And so this is what leads to the deluge of complaints that overwhelms the GLU at that time, and what they're then trying to... And there seems to be this one instance which James Snyder posted about, where there's a sort of peace activist in there who says things that are, mildly pro-Palestine, slightly anti-Israel, but he's Jewish as well.
Yeah.
And he does a back and forth.
Schneider.
Yes, of course. And he sort of says, and he has a thread on this, which he hasn't been sued for. So I'm gonna, given Sam Matthews is litigious, I'm gonna take to be the truth. He says, give me 1 second.
For me, I will say, since this is just a value judgment, I think we're all right here. For me, Sam Matthews is one of the great villains of this whole narrative. And when you've finished with this, I have something regarding his comments made on the Panorama documentary I want to say.
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, basically, if anyone wants to see it, I can provide a link. But James basically shows that James was like, I've just been contacted by the Telegraph, regarding David Collier's report for comment, because obviously he would be, and he then calls Sam Matthews, who is the person responsible for interrogating the claims made, and Sam Matthews eventually says, "Oh yeah, we've suspended a few members who are visibly anti-Semitic," and James is like, "Okay, cool. Well, now I'll brief. Now I can, head held up high, tell people that we've acted on this." But as it turns out, there was one Jewish peace activist who was suspended, and there were some incredibly virulent anti-Semitic comments which were just not actioned on. And this is on the 7th of March, and if you look at what happens later from the 9th of March, you just get a series of very passive aggressive. There's that famous one that was printed in the Times, which is someone saying, "Please, can we get a response to the below? I know we want to suspend somebody. Please, 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 please." And that seems to be what they're launching on in order to sort of say, "Oh, we previously had a solid commitment that the leader's office would just sign off on anything," and that doesn't really. And Forde, again, he never interrogates that. He just sort of interrogates the period, and then he says, "Well, eventually, we understand that that's not actually the case. The leader's office was invited." And this... Sorry, I need to find my notes because I was looking at the report. But he then goes on to, there's this he said, she said stuff in terms of what is written down in emails and what is actually documentarily verifiable.
Oh, is this the offline interference bit?
Yes, I'm coming on to that. Because, and he says, quite simply, that the claims, he doesn't say Panorama specifically, but he basically is referring to the claims made in Panorama, that the claims, the narrative put forward was partial and misleading. And he sort of then does a bit of lawyerly kind of thing saying, "Oh, well, maybe it was reasonably held beliefs, etc." But he then goes forward and says, "It is, in our view, it is entirely misleading to imply that these emails in themselves were evidence of the leader's office inserting themselves unbidden into the disciplinary process for factional reasons." And again, this is unequivocal, but he equivocates throughout. He says, "Well, X, Y, and Z, maybe he said, she said," and then maybe a thought experiment would conclude. But in this, he says, "No, that's a pathetic view of the narrative."
Yeah. I also think that, there's clearly something factional going on. If you think that, James Schneider, a Jewish man, is just purposefully stonewalling Sam Matthews because the latter cares about anti-Semitism and the former doesn't. Again, just like Seamus Milne said, something's wrong here.
And the thing is, it is very reminiscent of the Ken Livingstone thing, where Sam Matthews is sort of saying one thing. He's saying, "Oh yeah, we're dealing with this right now," and then it turns out, "Oh wait, shit, no, we're not, and we're going to leave you guys to hold the bag."
Yeah. Well, these guys are sort of bag carriers by nature, so that they can really picture other people holding bags.
Oh, they know where to place the bags.
Holding bags, opening doors, that's their kind of thing.
And the thing you
closing the door to socialism.
Closing putting the bag out of the fire escape for everyone involved in the Forde report to go work in some unions. But I think what you were hinting at earlier is there's another aspect of it where there's the McNichol claims, where he's like where Forde says it's like, "Oh well, many other claims were made in relation to this that Here it is. Numerous examples of leaders' office pressure and interference were cited by respondents to this inquiry and in the Panorama programme, which do not, unlike what we just discussed, involve paper trails, and which are harder to prove or disprove.
Just like, as things with no evidence tend to be.
But he says, and so he says, well, we cannot make any specific findings in relations to those. We accept in broad terms... where is it? Yeah, we accept in broad terms that there was a cumulative build-up of pressure on GLU staff in this period.
So it
was like, oh, okay.
I'm sure they were under pressure. It's a high-pressure job, but... that's quite loyally phrasing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, well, we can't prove anything, even though we just did a sort of semi-forensic analysis of what was happening there, and we've concluded that the side in the Panorama, the Panorama narrative is, at the very least, nonsense. When presented with something that we can't, that we can't do, then we actually accept that Ian McNichol and John Ware, etc., do really have a case to make.
Yeah, it just goes to a different school.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, my cousin who works at Nintendo, and his uncle who owns Nintendo, they have all this evidence that clearly shows that Ian McNichol is purely on the level here.
Yeah, it's like, well, the actual claims they made are categorically untrue. But on the other hand, they were probably going through it, man.
Well, and also, the kicker in all this is he says that the pressure was not least from part of the membership falsely accusing them of a witch hunt in relation to anti-Semitism.
What? Well, he's just detailed how they were witch hunting people for their politics generally. And doesn't he reiterate even in other places in the report? But obviously... the behaviour of these people, the factional behaviour, did make it impossible for the membership to trust them.
Yes, no, I'm glad you said that because I was actually searching for that very passage. Yeah, no, he says literally that the validation period in 2016, which we discussed, that represented such a breakdown in trust that here we go. It embedded an extremely damaging conviction amongst parts of the membership that the party's disciplinary system was rigged against them.
God, some extremely damaging conviction. That's some real liberal faith in our institutions bullshit. It's like, come on, the problem's not that the institutions aren't working, but that nobody can trust them for some reason.
It's pretty wonderful, isn't it? And this allowed the false idea that complaints of anti-Semitism were being fabricated as part of a witch hunt to take hold more easily than otherwise it would have.
Well, you know what? Something I wanted to get to that allowed this impression to take hold to a greater extent than it otherwise would have. Is to return to the very bad man Sam Matthews, which, I mean, so in the Panorama documentary, he said a few things. There are a couple of things were said, and some of them were the false claims that we've just talked about. But there was also some other stuff that I believe is false, but I don't know if you can necessarily prove this in a court of law, as it's kind of subjective. I would say it's kind of objectively wrong, actually. But again, I don't understand all this legal thingamajig. Like, speak English, doc. We ain't scientists or whatever. So, like on the Panorama documentary, Sam Matthews said, Jeremy Corbyn has done more than anyone in modern political history to bring about the rise of anti-Semitism. Anyone in modern political history. So you think, what does he mean by that? Well, I'll tell you what he means. At the end of this paragraph, he concludes, he is the biggest friend anti-Semites have had since the Second World War. So, a fairly conventional definition of modern political history, since World War II. Ergo, Jeremy Corbyn is the worst anti-Semite since Hitler. That's not an exaggeration, that's what he's saying in here. And that's an extraordinary claim to make. It's so obviously wrong, so obviously just insane hyperbolic rhetoric. That, of course, the Labour Party disciplinary processes were not something that members on the left could trust when it was run by people like Sam Matthews, who, by the way, in that paragraph he says, whether or not Jeremy Corbyn himself is an anti-Semite is an irrelevance. He is the biggest friend that anti-Semites have had in the Second World War. He then obviously thinks, oh shit, did I just say that he leaves some possible doubt that Corbyn's an anti-Semite? He then caveated, I don't believe Theresa May is an Islamophobe with an army of Islamophobic advisors around her. I do think the Labour Party is led by an anti-Semite, though. So he was like, I went a bit soft comparing him to Hitler there. I just need to clarify that, yeah, he does actually personally dislike Jewish people. That's insane.
Well, it is insane, but also let's look at the juxtaposition of what he's saying here, because he's saying, I don't believe Theresa May is an Islamophobe with an army of Islamophobic advisors around here. That implies that in his next sentence, where he is juxtaposing Corbyn against May, that he believes that he is an anti-Semite with an army of anti-Semitic advisors.
Well, first of all, his office wasn't well staffed enough to hire an army of advisors, so that's wrong for a start.
Yeah, it's more of a company.
a small coterie of anti-Semitic advisors, please. No.
At most a platoon.
Yeah. Who is this bitch talking about anyway? Name names, motherfucker.
He'll never name names. I do think the Labour Party is led by an anti-Semite, though. I think what gets him out here is like, I do think.
Okay.
That's what gets you.
Oh yeah, like I said, I don't know if this stuff is actionable. It's just wrong morally and I believe factually.
Oh yeah, no. The thing with Sam Matthews is, from my understanding, and this is all allegedly, from my understanding, he was on the hook for gross misconduct in the way he handled it. He handled the complaints process as, in his position of that. And what they did was, rather than put him through a disciplinary process, they allowed him to quit and probably paid him off, a couple of months' salary, and made him sign a non-disclosure agreement.
And that was a big deal, wasn't it? That was like why he was such a courageous whistleblower for breaking his NDA.
Because because they dared to. Yeah, he was a courageous whistleblower for giving a bunch of emails to the Times, who, we should note, when they published their the emails that he gave them, they didn't. The only people they crossed the names out of were pretty much the people in those the people who were the subject of the Forde report. I believe they actually kept in the names of people under investigation when they published those.
Fuck, so much for natural justice.
No right of response there, but what are you going to do? That wasn't part of the Forde report's terms of reference. But anyway, so basically Sam Matthews got out way easier than he could have, and then perhaps he spoke to somebody and they said, wait a minute, you've got something here. You can just cast yourself as a whistleblower. And what are you whistleblowing? Well, stuff we did ourselves, but institutionally, if you can technically fit within the definition of a whistleblower, even if you were part of what was going on.
Yeah, you just have to say, oh, it made me feel sick. I was really upset. Like, oh, sorry.
And the fun punchline to Sam Matthews is, given we started the conversation of this about Keir Starmer and his whole thing, you know who represented him?
Mishcon de Reya.
Mishcon de Reya.
Who Starmer obviously had a part-time job with, which he would have kept had Corbyn not made it a precondition of Starmer remaining in his shadow cabinet that he not keep that job.
Well, I think he was still allowed to do consulting, but he just wasn't allowed to take an actual official figure, so he could still do, like...
Yes,
like,
Ilford South Park would be perfectly fine for a CIA black site. That's not his voice. Yes, you can talk to him there, it's fine. Wank.
And that's... and that's the thing, and all of this, the period in question, this is what leads to the Panorama documentary. And the Panorama documentary is... This is sort of the original sin, which feeds through into, you know, the IHRA adoption, Margaret Hodges' behaviour.
Do you want to hear how Sam Matthews describes the IHRA debate, by the way? I witnessed a deliberate attempt by these people to redefine what constituted modern-day anti-Semitism, mainly so they could let their mates off the charge. Just wrong on every level. Like, the Corbyn leadership did not invent the idea that there are problems with the IHRA definition. Ask Kenneth Stern, who was one of its authors. I mean, you can check out the Guardian piece by him that they helpfully published on the 13th of December 2019.
I can't say this for like 100% certainty, but you know, if there was a way of proving this in a cosmic sense, I would bet every piece of money that I have, all wealth, that Sam Matthews hadn't heard of the IHRA definitions of anti-Semitism before 28. No one had. Virtually no one in journalism.
And then just
had.
Overnight, boom, everyone agrees with the IHRA definition. It's universally accepted.
The only reason I had
Do you remember when the Tories actually like stealth edited in at like 1 a.m. onto their website?
And they didn't even do it competently.
Don't worry, the other racisms are still cool.
But also they forgot to say, oh, this doesn't apply to members as well. So they fucked it up even in that regard. But it's insane because the only reason I knew about them was because I was a real big Obama guy back in the day, and so. The IHRA definitions were the things that like the APAC guys of that world were really just hammering him for and sort of prepping to sort of call him a dickhead and say, oh, you're actually anti-Semitic. So that's how I'd heard of them. And so when they came up in 2018, I was like, wait a minute, I recognize this. It's something that a bunch of right-wing psychos are going to use to shut down all legitimate debate.
Yeah.
And of course, nobody listened or cared. I posted a thread. Somebody under my name posted a thread.
Some imposter, some fucking fraud, who just happened to have exactly the same politics and legal expertise as you.
Yeah, analysing an opinion that Jeffrey Robertson, QC, former Starmer colleague, gave to a Palestinian organisation, stating quite clearly that the IHRA definitions were just not fit for purpose as a disciplinary tool. And his recommendations that if you were going to use them, if you simply have to use them, you include a couple of caveats saying that, you know, this will not impede free speech on the matter of Palestinian liberation, which was what Corbyn did, and I think, and I can't remember the exact trigger, but I think that was deemed just completely outrageous, and I think Margaret Hodge was inspired to.
Yeah.
That's when she allegedly called Corbyn a fucking racist and anti-Semite, but she has only acknowledged recently that she called him a racist and anti-Semite.
She wouldn't use naughty words, Margaret Hodge.
No, she would leave that to. Sorry, I was about to say something very.
Who else was allegedly yelling abuse on that night? Didn't he yell at Ian Lavery? He was squared up to him and called him a fucking anti-Semite or something.
I think was yelled at Ian Lavery several times. I'm not sure if it was that exact.
Give me my
occasion.
dog back!
It's like,
no! You can't take it away! It's my rights! I can do it in Parliament! There's no law against
Ian
it.
Lavery.
It's no hanging
Ian
matter.
Lavery
It's no capital crime. To quote the
He
Stones'
invited,
pro-pedophilia song "Stray Cat Blues." All right, I'm done now.
Yeah, no, I think that was when Lavery invited some Battersea Dugham people and the RSPCA into Parliament. And, you know, milk got very animated.
Yeah.
Allegedly, these are alleged things that may or may not have happened. Sorry, we got way off track on
You
that
got
one.
confused. Pete meant to say it was an animated character resembling you.
Yes.
Slip of the tongue.
but
Which is
yeah.
incidentally what he does to dogs' arseholes.
Oh no! Fuck's sake.
I'm gonna have to like beep his name there, but everyone's gonna get it. Because we're talking
Some
about
unrelated
him.
person.
Yeah.
The hint is some unrelated person to the discussion we just had. I think really getting into the IHRA thing is what leads us into the final storm, so maybe we can pick up there.
Coming storm. Okay, right. The perfect storm, you could say.
Yeah.
I think it was a perfect storm because I am glad that Boris Johnson became I'm glad that my hero Boris Johnson defeated the menace of Jeremy Corbyn. That now has now been defeated by my hero Keir Starmer. Whatever. I fucked that up. Anyway, I'm going for a piss. Yes, I sure am glad that my hero Boris Johnson defeated the evil Jeremy Corbyn so that he could in turn be defeated by my other hero, Keir Starmer. Nailed it.
Much better, yeah.
Well, is Pete still pissing?
I presume
He's still
so.
Constantine pissing. Constantine kissing some ass. That's right. Got him.
Alright, I'm back, fellas.
Right, we were on to IHRA, weren't we?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't want to dwell on that too much because the funny thing is, whenever you see anyone who is famously excommunicado from the Labour Party these days, there's no reference to the IHRA at all.
No.
It's mostly because they were, you know, they sort of made eye contact with somebody from Socialist Appeal or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's why the whole debate was never really about using that as you know, a legitimate form of discipline. It was merely to just keep the whirligig going. And that's what happened. It was very successful and allowed a lot of people to sort of mainstream calling Jeremy Corbyn an anti-Semite. And, you know, they Change UK and I was looking this up actually.
Heroes.
Ivan Lewis, complete heroes. Joan Woodcock and Ivan Lewis both sort of quit because of sexual assault or sexual misconduct.
Allegations.
They were suspended for them and then quit saying, actually we're doing this because Jeremy Corbyn's an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
Which is very, very convenient.
Well, look, I'll say there's no greater expert on gapesology than myself. Possibly FFF. I think we're the two greats. I think Geraint is following. I think Tom Foster, because he made the Milk Gapes video. I guess Esther Weber, because she made the video that they got, that was made from. You know, we're the great.
No, a footnote in history.
Fuck off. We're basically like the greats of the gapesological field, and I can say Mike Gapes did not talk about Jeremy Corbyn as an anti-Semite prior to about 2018. Well, yeah, prior to this period. I mean, you will... Of course Gapes disagreed on Palestine and so forth with Jeremy Corbyn. He probably secretly did think, oh, well, he's an anti-Zionist. You know what that means. Even though Corbyn isn't really technically an anti-Zionist these days, unfortunately. But, you know, he's enough that he was more so than any other mainstream politician. And which obviously is one of the reasons why they say he's not a mainstream politician, despite him demonstrably representing a pretty sizable portion of the UK population. Nonetheless, like, Gapes, you know, it was all he's shit. We're going to be an electoral ruin. Blah blah blah. NATO, Russia, etc. Like, it wasn't really maybe a bit of Hamas and stuff, but there wasn't really he's anti-Semitic. And then suddenly, and you notice this in that fucking shitty little self-published book that Change UK, or the surviving members of Change UK,
With this
recently.
podcast representing a significant proportion, like several percentage points of the entire lifetime sales of that book.
Yeah, precisely. Like, it was just a little job edited allegedly by Anne Coffey under a pseudonym. I say I made that allegation,
look,
to be honest, but it's out there.
Only 7 people read it. But they all went on to form centrist parties. So.
Hey, you know, on the plus side, given the kind of budget they had for that book, I don't know how much of a legal fund those guys have got going at the moment. But basically, like, it has all these quotes from Gapes. Like, you know, he keeps saying, "As I tweeted on the blah blah blah." He just loves his own tweets. He's like, just got this encyclopedic memory of like who he told to trot off on like the 16th of April 2016 or whatever. But you know, you read all of them, and he's just not talking about Corbyn in that tone.
Yeah.
And then, you know, despite it being one of the most vociferous anti-Corbyn MPs, then it's like over the IHRA thing, a switch is flipped.
Yeah, no, you're right.
And even though you can read all those back quotes from Gapes that he's voluntarily giving you, he's still like, yeah, I always thought this.
Well, it's what they could get to stick, because I think they tried with the IHRA, the IRA.
I want to hear the IRA definition. What do they think about anti-Semitism?
I mean, don't ask David Aronovich what he thinks.
Oh yeah, well they're pretty pro-Palestine, so
I think he would, you know, he would say that Israel should nuke Ireland, basically. That's not me saying that he has said that. That's me saying that that's what he probably thinks. No.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of legal caveats in this episode. We're just being careful. It's better to be safe.
Well, you know,
we're the kind of show that always we think before.
There's only so far parody can carry. You gotta sometimes put a disclaimer in there. But no, you're quite right. It's like the IHRA, and I think the March-April period and that sort of central period in 2018, that really flips everything. Because prior to that, the only people who were willing to call Corbyn an anti-Semite outright were guys like Dan Hodges and Louise Mensch. You know, the real fucking starring minds of our gen.
Yeah. I mean, Dan, get well soon with the COVID, mate. Like, they've obviously like given him like the fucking melt equivalent of Novichok, and he's just, you know, they took him out so that he couldn't lay out the truth against the hated Super Tansky on Byline TV. Although, to be fair, the topic of conversation was going to be, is the right-wing press a menace to democracy, to which Dan was arguing on the no side. So, yeah, I'm sure it would have been a mixed bag.
I feel like Super Tansky would have made it all about Starmer, though. So.
Yeah, she would have made me be like, yeah, the Daily Mail's fucking awesome. I hope it does a hit job on her. Look, I had to endure that shit. Like, why
and that's kind of it. To sort of go a bit back to what we were talking about. This is, you know, the pre-2018 kind of situation is you have people who are you know, in 2019 calling the Labour Party an irredeemable cesspit of anti-Semitism, who are saying that the Chakrabarti recommendations, there's a report nobody remembers except for the EHRC, were good and should have been done, including one Rabbi Ephraim Mervis.
Oh, but one, didn't he later say Corbyn was like?
He wrote a letter to the Times the morning of the Andrew Neil interview, saying that Corbyn was an existential threat to history.
I thought that was a great interview, and that Andrew Neil has lots of moral high ground over Jeremy Corbyn. Corbyn's name probably listed about 10 times in the Little Black Book, not just 5.
Well, also, there's no coincidence at all. I'm not alleging that the timing of that was in any way suspect to give Andrew Neil sort of a hook to perhaps embarrass Corbyn or hector him on the issue. That I'm saying that didn't happen. I'm specifically saying that there's no reason to believe that Andrew Neil is in any way below board or a skulking piece of shit who should have died of COVID.
But I mean, what do you think happened between 2016 and 18 that Rabbi Mervis,
yeah, you got
his name right, went from believing, that allies of Jeremy Corbyn were proactively making constructive suggestions about how to combat anti-Semitism within the party, to doing what he did in 2019 and explicitly making a political intervention against the Labour Party in a general election?
I think there's a couple of factors. One is they sort of assumed that 2017 would be the killing blow that would do what to the left was eventually done by Keir Starmer, in terms of just sort of killing it. But when it turned out that 40% of people might be up for this, it was simply unacceptable for any discussion of, let's be honest, Palestinian rights to advance into the mainstream. If you look at the Miliband years, you get similar sort of Jewish Chronicle articles saying that Ed Miliband is anathema to sort of Jewish values. And here's a poll saying 82% of by the JC saying 82% of Jewish people despise this man and would vote sorry. And I think that was meant to be the norm. It wasn't meant to scare people. It was just sort of meant to inform policy-making decisions. But when Corbyn comes along, he's actually, let's say had Ed Miliband come in, I don't think he would have really put his money where his mouth was on this. It was more of a fop to anything. But Jeremy Corbyn is a bit more committed to this. And it would be deemed an unconscionable sort of state of affairs to have, part of the imperial core to be like, actually, guys, can you not do this to Israel? And also at the same time, you've got the sort of extended assault against BDS, which is going on in the US and the UK in line. So I think there's kind of a test case to be made that against Corbyn. It's like, okay, well, if we can bring this guy down, we can bring the whole, Palestinian solidarity movement down. And frankly, they kind of succeeded.
Yeah, I mean, some of our friends even would disagree that anti-Semitism was the pivotal thing that felled the Corbyn project in 2019. And I might disagree. I don't know if you can attribute the end purely to one thing. But where I think it played such a pivotal role was that it just sapped the movement of its confidence, of its energy, of its enthusiasm. Campaigning for Jeremy Corbyn went from being like, no, this guy is unfairly maligned by the media, he just believes in peace, and I can feel good about that, to just this grim, relentless thing of like, no, he's actually not a genocidal racist, like, please believe us. And no one wants to do that shit. Like, I fucking freaked out like the night before the 2019 general election was announced because I saw some leak that not even any of Labour's left-wing MPs wanted to go on TV to defend Corbyn against anti-Semitism allegations. I was like, okay, we're not going to win the general election then if people can't have like the confidence in what we're doing. And it was something that hit at the core of the identity of left-wingers. You know, most of us aren't racists, and none of us want to be called racist.
That's correct, and that continues to this day, and not just in terms of the anti-Semitism thing, but in terms of people who are kind of like, I need to walk away from these anti-imperialist principles. But in terms of the 2019 election itself, there was another dynamic at play, which, because once an election is called, there's a set amount of days that you get to bring out a grid. Go for your policies, etc., etc. And so every single, or every other day at most, that there was a story about Labour anti-Semitism, which would drown out any positive sort of stories that anyone could.
Absolutely, every interview that anybody did on anti-Semitism.
Well, if you're a member of staff of the compliance unit, you wouldn't have cared because you just ignored any abuse that was directed against Jeremy Corbyn or indeed Diane Abbott.
Mm. Yeah.
And the one thing the Forde report, or one of the things the Forde report does go into is how utterly disgraceful the treatment of her. Well, they say two things: that the treatment of her is bad, and the way people viewed her was bad. But then they sort of equivocate, saying, "Oh, but that one story about her being cited in the toilets, that's unsubstantiated and perhaps even satire." So,
To be fair, though, all they really said about that was that the bit about involving Michael Crick was not the same as the context it appeared as in that report. It was a different in-joke that they were bringing into it, but they were still like riffing at length on
exactly
Diane Abbott crying in public.
Exactly.
In her distress and the abuse she faces. That's the worst bit. The trying to get a journalist in it would have just been an extra level of disgusting. But it doesn't really change anything that one part of it wasn't
also
serious.
I've no evidence of this, but Michael Crick no, I do have evidence of this. Just look at his entire journalistic
Michael Crick would have been in there like a shot.
Michael Crick is a factional operator on the Labour right, not an objective journalist. He's written a book that's basically just a tribute to John Golding's Hammer of the Left, and investigated real pivotal issues facing democracy, like whether the Labour Party was trying to rig the vote in Ilford South, and one should send your postal votes directly to Mike Gapes. That's the kind of story he takes interest in, and that's telling about Michael Crick.
The only good tweet Michael Crick has ever made was when left-wing activists spat in his hair and he put a photo of his balding, spit-covered head on Twitter. How dare they? These horrible
Actually,
views.
a really bad tweet that Michael Crick did was where he tweeted I was just in a taxi driver. He told me Diane Abbott's a fucking bitch and I hate that she's black or something. He tweeted the most obscene. I think they used terms about her in the WhatsApp chats in the leaked report, dehumanizing terms, not the fake dehumanization tactics common to the extremes that James Bloodworth,
but actually terms that specifically, distinguish her.
So basically, this taxi driver had apparently told Michael Crick, "Don't know how you can trust that Jeremy Corbyn, given he's shagged that Diane Abbott." Just totally inappropriate thing for a journalist to be tweeting out.
There was so much of that shit about for years, but for fucking journalists to be doing it on their professional account says it all about how normalised this shit
so
was.
Michael Crick actually has a history of kind of being this insulting and insensitive and prejudiced towards Diane Abbott, or at the very least thinking there's a lot something interesting in what people say who do have those views of her, and I firmly believe that he is a factional ally on their side of the Labour Party. So I mean, it's not outside the realms of possibility if I was Michael Crick and they asked me, hey, did they send you some shit about Diane Abbott crying in the toilets? I'd say, oh no, of course not.
It seems to me more like it's like, oh, there have been sightings of Diane Abbott. Haha, should we send this to Michael Crick? As in, Michael Crick is the guy who we would usually send to do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Ergo, I mean, Michael, is he even around? Maybe he blocked me. That like the new Michael Crick is Lee Harpin these days.
I don't feel like Crick is particularly well connected.
He's like semi-retired.
these days.
He works for Mail Online, making stupid videos about Ilford South politics.
Mail Plus, not even the main Mail.
It's like
shit.
paywalled
They
Mail,
get
isn't
the
it?
Real... yeah.
So I think we conclude that his spiritual successor.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not a bad. Yeah, that makes sense.
Schofield has
quit.
quit his brief liaison as a gambling lobbyist to return to journalism, alleged journalism as well.
Yeah, he's back, baby. We got the scope. It's awesome.
Change the fucking
but also
ancient.
What he's playing Big Zeus
on the Diane Abbott.
He's getting mad blunted in that alley, bro.
Truth suits.
On the particular thing, just to round out the Diane Abbott discussion, is that Forde sort of lays out a whole bunch of things, and he says, the disgusting treatment of Diane Abbott, and then he says at the end, it's like, it's a real shame that all the focus was on this Michael Crick crying in the toilet story, because that's not been substantiated, and therefore, we can kind of just conclude that this is factional. And it's very much like the hat scandal in Newsnight, Jeremy Corbyn wearing the communist hat.
Yeah.
Because every element of that was photoshopped, with the possible exception of that. Because but because that one tiny element was inaccurate, you had a bunch of people who were able to say, There's a small
disregard for wider truth to the story.
Any allegation of bias is ridiculous. Given the whole thing was mocked up as like Soviet art sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like I declare a mistrial because you said the hat was key to this, and nobody ever said the hat was key to it all. They just somebody mentioned upon a list of things that the hat was.
Yeah, I mean the big fucking Kremlin in the background was pretty significant as well.
Well, it wasn't actually. That wasn't the Kremlin. That was.
It's St. Peter's Church, wasn't it? Is that what it's called?
It was St. Basil's Church.
St. Basil's, whatever. Sorry. I'm in political exile from Russia due to my fallout with the Putin regime. I stand with Ukrainians. I'm going over there with a shipment of
javelin
machine guns.
Yeah,
javelin missile. Just machine guns and fire and flamethrowers. I'm going over there tomorrow, and we'll have peace by tea time.
Well, I've actually visited Russia. It's very nice.
Oh, nice. Excellent. That's pretty cool, man. That's a claim to fame.
Yeah, thanks. Paul Mason is.
You fucking what?
This will one day be used in the Byline Media expose on Real Politics.
I've actually been to Russia. Like headline.
If my audio cuts out, it's because Paul Mason has garroted me.
Can't handle the truth. First they came for Hodges, then they took out Pete. The brave truth tellers felled one by one.
They're the main two. Yeah.
those two, Sam Matthews, etc. Oh man, we should wrap up soon. We've been going for like 2.5 hours.
We really should wrap up soon. I'm fucking.
Yeah, I'm gonna barely edit this shit apart from to beep out that one name. Should we? How should we wrap up? What do we have left to talk about? What is remaining? I think we've covered some of the...
It's been about 2 hours since we called Keir Starmer a
fucking cunt. An evil man. Fuck him.
Yes.
Fuck Keir Starmer. Just want to say that.
I don't know if he's gone to jail while we've recorded this, but I expect by the time it's edited, he will be. Yes, he will be safely locked away from the public he ripped off so disgracefully.
I just hope no tragic accidents befall him in jail, possibly relating to his large amount of knowledge of deep state activities.
He is currently on holiday, so.
Oh yeah, he's getting back in 10 days. He's fucking done a runner. He knew this was coming, and he's like, "Yes, I'm out of the country for 3 weeks."
Yeah. He's in Ukraine, fighting on the front line. Like,
He'll resurface in like full Azov battalion gear with all the fucking Britain tattoos.
Nobody photoshopped
Keir Starmer? I've never heard of him.
To see Keir Starmer photoshopped in the Azov battalion.
That was awful. Yeah,
and to see the only anti-imperialist struggle, the only true anti-imperialist struggle, trivialized in that manner.
Yeah, well, it's not like anyone has weighed in on the conduct of the Ukrainian army today, and amnesty, yeah.
Oh, what, you mean that bunch of trots? The same people who said that the only democracy in the Middle East is an apartheid state. Yeah, Paul. Yeah, I'm not, right.
But
I'm going to listen to that.
Seriously wrap up, I guess, on the Forde conversation is it's the sort of coda to all this is that the claims in the Panorama documentary are essentially just settled because the BBC just said nothing to see here, folks, and Starmer and co said nope. We're not gonna include any of the vulgar claims there, and weirdly, John Ware has declined to sue Jeremy Corbyn.
Oh
yeah,
after making a lot of noise about it.
You know, I think there's a 300,000 pound strong defence fund against any action for Ware and co.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with that. I don't really care.
I think there's probably a heavy price tag, and also John Ware is a pussy-hole.
But at the end of the day, it's like Forde has come along and said, "Yeah, actually, this was all bullshit." It's kind of like when it's like the shortened term where the US declassifies documents saying, "Yeah, actually, we did like sterilize a bunch of black people, but it's too late now. You can't really do anything about it." And so the best we might even get is some further some further reference in a memoir in 20 years' time with some contemporary... What I mean is with, like, you know, Ware was saying, oh, you have no idea what evidence we had that would have come out in a court case.
Again, just goes to another school.
Yeah, exactly.
Just all this evidence that they just didn't consider pertinent to their TV program. Okay.
To the TV program, or preventing the greatest anti-Semite since Hitler, to prevent. Yeah, they were just like, no, we're holding back on this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No need to give this to Lee Harpin. No need to get a grid of how to put this stuff out during the 2019 general election.
Yeah, so maybe we'll get a memoir about that, and that'll be pretty cool.
Shit. Oh, man, well, as we know, some of the claims made in that documentary relate directly to Mr. Seamus Milne. Mr. Seamus Milne! Who is said to be writing a book that is taking a long time. Thus, I assume it will be the definitive account of the Corbyn years.
I mean, maybe he will reveal all of these WhatsApp groups that you and I have been involved with, all 78 of them.
Yeah. It would just be full of quotes from us that we've told Seamus some like hilarious shit in DMs. He's like, yeah, and then Bane said this really fucking funny thing. Like,
sorry. That's the one thing I want to go back to. Forde, in terms of the WhatsApp checks, Forde says, it's like, in terms of that WhatsApp chat, he says, oh, well, as you would expect with a WhatsApp chat, it contains, fairly anodyne things relating to work stuff and personal lives. And so when those things are stripped away, the actual terrible things that are put in there, they seem really bad. It's like, wait, so your defense is you wanted more personal life stuff in there to soften the blow of saying that certain people should die in a fire?
Yeah. And the pertinent stuff is pertinent.
Yeah. He
The impertinent stuff is not pertinent. Like, yeah, great insight.
yeah, and also it puts to bed the idea that a WhatsApp chat started amongst work colleagues for the purpose of work is some sort of private correspondence. So that's my legal take for the day. If you're in a workplace and you have a work chat in WhatsApp, don't say anything you don't want to see in court.
Pete, it has been a pleasure to get your legal expertise on all these thorny matters today.
Well, that's what I'm here for, and I just need to say that nothing, unless you pay me the $5 that Jimmy McGill gets paid in Breaking Bad, nothing is client related. So A, it's not privileged, and B, you can't sue me for it if you in fact go down. So yeah.
I go so further as to say nothing in this show, or indeed in our wider careers as podcasters, has ever been actionable, and I urge you not to further investigate that claim.
All right, guys.
Thank you for having me.
It's
up.
been really, really good, man. We've gone seriously in depth. I'm glad to have done this.
Yeah.
Now I still live in that railroad shack, and I wander around that dusty old track like a lonely old timer out of my mind, looking for a woman who is sweet and kind to me. Back when the milk train used to rumble my shack, used to stop outside of my door, but now the milk train doesn't come by here anymore. Now the only thing to come on through is a Jimmy John now and then, and I dream of the day she'll come back this way and let me get to know her